to the April 21st meeting for the African Burial Ground Memorial Park Committee. We will go around and do a roll call. I am Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Daria Steele, Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire.
Corin Hallowell, Parks and Greenery Foreman, City of Portsmouth.
Ron Basin, Committee Member.
Dee Forte, Historic Cemetery Committee.
Kathy Wheeler, archaeologist who worked on this project.
Perfect.
Chief of Patterson, Seacoast African American Cultural Center.
Suzanne Woodland, Deputy City Manager.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And we may have a few members joining us in a little bit. Next, I would like to review and approve the draft minutes for the March 3rd, 2025 meeting. Were there any corrections or anything that any of the members, did everyone have a chance to review? Perfect. I would look for a motion to accept those minutes.
I make a motion to accept those minutes.
Perfect.
Second.
Second, perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And now we will move on to the mission statement and committee name. I know that we have gone back and forth on a couple versions, and I believe at our last meeting we went over the final edits. And so I'll pass it to Suzanne so we can get that solidified.
No, I'll just confirm, at the last meeting, I think we all came to consensus on the proposed updated mission. So I just left it on the sheet so we'd all have it in front of us. And then there was some conversation back and forth about potential future committee names. And everyone wanted time to think about it. So here we are.
Does anyone, and I'll open the floor for discussion, if anyone had any desire to change the name, or if anyone had any ideas, kind of the reconstitution of the mission, expanding outside of just the one site. Okay. If there's no discussion, I think right now we will table any name change right now until maybe we have more members in attendance or the item naturally comes back up again. Okay. And number 4 is our scheduling our community engagement session. And I will turn it over again to Suzanne.
So I've been in contact with both Megan Howie and with Amy Michaels at the University of New Hampshire, and we've had trouble sort of finding a date to have a meeting, in part, as you might imagine, with the changes, potential changes at the state level and the federal level in terms of funding for UNH and various pressures and policy changes. Their plate has been full, but they're still interested. And so it's just going to take a little more time, I think, until things settle down on there and maybe they get past the end of the semester. And then we can try and find some dates to have the conversation, not only with the committee, but with stakeholders and the descendant community. So asking for patience as they kind of work in their kind of challenged realm right now. And then they'll get back to us with some dates and options.
Thank you so much.
I just got one thing. The summer program, the Dinah Whipple summer program, have sent us an invitation for the burial ground celebration or consecration for the 13th.
Yep.
Yes,
Just to let you know about that.
Yep, we're going to talk about that later.
that's on here.
Agenda.
Just there. Okay.
Perfect, and that actually leads into perfectly our next item. We have Kathleen Wheeler here, who was the head archaeologist on the 2014 to 15 findings and led the reburial of the ancestors. And so she's here today to kind of, as we look into the next phase of this committee, I think it's always relevant to look back. And Kathleen is prepared a presentation for this committee and the public to kind of remind us of where the project started, the steps that were taken through her and her team in regards to the interment of the remains and the ancestors that were found. So thank you so much.
This presentation is pretty much, as an archaeologist, looks at time. So I'll actually take you backwards from the burial date of May 25th, 2015, and sort of go back through at least August 2014. I just was with the city of Portsmouth on the water replacement line down Chestnut Street, and was a little surprised, shocked, perhaps horrified to see how little the young men knew anything about this project, knew anything about why they were there watching with us. So it impelled me to come back and remind people who were here and to educate those who were not present in 2015 or for 2014, just to kind of review some of the main points and the care and dedication that went into this whole reburial process. So going backwards, after the ceremony was over, Jerome Meadows oversaw the placement of the vault lid, and that Sankofa is in a little bit of state of poor repair at the moment. The tiles have begun to fleck off, and that is certainly an issue you guys have probably discussed. But the vault lid is heavy. It required a crane and fabric, and just a lot of attention to get it aligned just perfectly over the vault opening. There was a procession. There was a very deliberate and careful plan, design, arrangement of all of the coffins that went in the ground. And there were a total of 8 coffins for the 8 individuals that were removed in 2003. And then there was a smaller coffin that was made for 5 individuals that came out by accident when we were looking in 2008 to learn just exactly how deep these burials were. The 6 foot deep, the 6 foot under, that rule does not apply here in New England. I can say almost with, most of the historic burials I've ever recovered are no deeper than 4 feet. And if you think about it, it's the length of a long-handled shovel. And our soil here is rocky, there's a lot of clay, and it's a pain in the butt to try to get yourself down to 6 feet. And then you've got to get somebody in a hole, or just, it's a lot more cumbersome to really get a hole 6 feet deep. I was a little surprised, however, to see that some of these burials were starting to appear as little as 18 inches below the tar. And that was as you start at the base of Court Street and you climb that hill, you start running into bedrock. So where we started with holes that were 5 feet deep, by the time we get near the top of the hill, we're only about 18 inches, and that's how we ended up with just fragments of burials that we would put in a separate box. It's a whole procession. In African culture, it's the males who usually attend to the physical move of the bodies and the deceased, and so we incorporated that element in the burial ceremony here. And the image on the right is that box that was specially made to hold the portions of individuals, the 5 individuals. And on the left is Oscar Mokeme, who is officiating through this entire process. I love that they brought a caisson and a horse-drawn carriage to transport those caskets over to the burial ground at the top of the hill, in a rather resplendent photograph of just as it processed from one street up to the top of the hill. Before anybody went back into the ground, there was a series of ceremonies at the New Hope Baptist Church. There was a sunrise, a sunset. It was a vigil where all of the caskets were brought in and set up on the altar. And there's a series of events and prayers and recitals that went on with that vigil. This is a very private part of the ceremony, and I had to get permission from the women elders to be able to share these images with you, because it's the women elders in African culture who prepare the bodies, prepare the deceased for burial. And I was privileged to attend, and I didn't participate beyond putting the bits of coffin wood in in the top, in the bottoms of the caskets. But the local women did all of the handling of the remains and wrapped them and secured them with the red ribbons. They left gifts. It could be anything from a shell is on the right, just under the red ribbon, there's a shell that's been left. There's a Jamaican coin. There were several beads that people had brought from Africa. There was one child, we don't know if it was a girl or a boy. We only know that they were about 7 to 12 years old at the time of their death, and that toy was left in that casket for the individual in grave number 7. I love Reverend Buckley off to the left. Every one of those coffin lids was secured. And I think some of these women got a great deal of delight in handling that mechanical drill to really tap down and tack down all of the coffin lids. Before they went in the ground on the 25th, there was actually a dress rehearsal so that the men could have an idea about their role and how the coffins were going to be placed inside the vault. It's a circular vault, and there was only so much space, but the space, in fact, was designed in accordance to the full volume and area that the caskets were going to take when you try to put them all together. And at the bottom and the inside, there's a little bit of a plan there so that each person that was carrying, say, the casket for burial 1 knew where to place the casket inside that vault. It was very orderly, and it was like Tetris. You would have to move all of them in order to get to any of the others. It fit very, very tightly. Some of the caskets had handles because they were going to go in on the side, and so there would be somebody inside the vault who would accept the box and tuck it under one side or the other. But for the ones that had to go in last, there was actually little handles that straps would go through, so that they could be lowered very precisely. Now, the city had at one time proposed to use construction season of 2014, and we were getting to like late July and August, and they really wanted to get this, they wanted the Memorial Park built in 2014. And there was this small contingent that went back to David Moore and said, we're not ready. It's too fast. There's another piece that has to happen before we start tearing things up. We were all prepared, but we need to consecrate the ground that these remains and these ancestors going back into. We don't really understand historically the significance if they were ever if the ground was ever consecrated when the burial ground was set aside for blacks. We do know it was terribly disrupted by sewer lines and gas lines and water lines. And it seemed like an element of ceremony was very much needed to make this sanctified ground. So in August 2014, it was rather a magnificent gathering again of the local community. Oscar Mokeme asked for 4 waters, and I apologize that I don't remember what all of them were. There was rainwater, there was well water, there was ocean water, and I don't remember what the 4th one is. And there were 4 separate vessels into which he dipped a wooden ladle, and he poured and sanctified and cleansed the burial ground. And a little bit later, this African deity appeared on the streets of Portsmouth, and to the right, he's got a feather, and he's blessing Valerie Cunningham here in this front row. Now, I didn't know how much I could take hours on this, so I'm going to leave it here, reminding you that this only takes us to August 2014 because we were working with the city in 2013. We took everything that came out of the ground and provided dimensions for the caskets that were rebuilt. We put everything back in those caskets. Every scrap of coffin wood that came out, every coffin nail, the one shroud pin. There's a metal disc that is punctured, and it was somewhat on top of a casket when we found it, but we couldn't really say it definitely goes here. I'm leaning now towards thinking it was some kind of coin or some kind of currency to send that soul to the right place. So we are probably all aware history can be so easily erased, and sometimes there's a benign evaporation of our own history because we don't spend enough time telling the stories again. I used to get a lot of calls to talk about this project, and I probably had done dozens of presentations. I'm happy to do presentations left and right, but then the calls stopped coming in. I stepped back, and I wasn't aggressive enough to go back out and say, you need to hear this. You need to hear this. You need to see this. So I turned 70 in February. I've got a short lifespan. My candle's burning at two ends now, something I need to commit again to getting this story out. And this is the first lap. This is the first, reignition of that mission for me, is to just to remind people who were not here, who may have been here, didn't see elements of this ceremony. But that was my purpose for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd open the floor for any questions for Kathleen. I have one question. Do we have, or do you have in your papers, filings, the layout still of how it was entered in? I think that would be really good to try to figure out a way, hello, come join in, to memorialize on. I think, one of the things is, 10 years ago in my early 20s, I wasn't so aware of everything. And so, part of joining this committee was amazing because I'm learning so much more. But I always think the things that I don't know that I find interesting and that I think are new waves of information we can share with the public on the site. I think it's so important too, and I know it's on some of those placards, but we as a city, I think, can do better, and also as the organizations that use that space and that share that mission of reminding people of things like you just said, that those graves go all the way up. That burial site is all the way up and much more broader than just at the memorial. And so I think any information that you're willing to share that we still have here, that we can find ways to whether reintegrate that more onto our website, within the other organizations, I think would be great to do.
And I certainly have more information now than I did in 2003 or 2008 or 2015. There was always a question about how big, how broad, where did it go? And based on everything that I've seen now, I truly believe that there was a narrow Chestnut Lane to the east that did not have any burials in it. I think everything was, if they take the old center line and you go from there and you go, as you look up to the top of the hill and you go to your left, I think that's where the burial ground is. I don't put it beyond possible that some of those houses on Chestnut Street may have, in fact, affected burials. There is a number that keeps coming up in the press about a possible total of 200 graves there. That number came from me based on what I knew in 2003, and I need to update that. And I need to talk about how I can get new numbers and new understandings out to the city and to the public.
Yeah, I think this committee is a great. So I would, anytime that you feel you have new information, including now if you feel you have new numbers, this committee, I think, is the easiest way to then get it out from the city aspect, from city government aspect.
Because we can update, any of the web pages that we control, and I think that's maybe what we talk about,
Yeah.
Assistant mayors, we could work to maybe update our
Our website and.
web information, and so.
So Kathleen, I have a question.
Yes.
This is lap one of you reigniting the storytelling.
Yes.
Where do you see lap two? Where do you see lap three?
I've spoken with Jerry Ann Bogus, and she has proposed that we might get May 24th, and I would speak at the public library. It
Okay.
would sort of be somewhat tied to the Juneteenth ceremony, but I would sort of get in ahead just to lay some new groundwork or some old groundwork.
Okay.
And beyond that, that's what I know is Lab 2, but I don't know what Lab 3 might entail.
Okay. Do you think that have you thought about Lab 3 or beyond, I don't know, some other type of public forum, whether, let's not even think about that part. I was thinking about schools or something like that, but new administration, that's probably going to be a dead,
Yeah.
a dead end,
Yeah.
et cetera. So, all right, so I'll just take that for right now. Thank you.
Okay. There's a book I desperately want to write, and there's a play I desperately want to write as well.
Ron,
I
if you
didn't
could
know
speak
I
just-
needed to, I didn't
speak
know I
into
needed to be
mic.
on the
Thank you.
microphone. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. He's awesome.
Yeah. I know that at least for me with SAC, we've done numerous tours of typically high school age students, some of the private schools locally and other schools. We usually do a few a year at least, so they are getting there. It is something that we've talked, and I know I've talked to other school board members about, and the school administration, of making sure that this is part of our localized curriculum to make sure these stories, and obviously, as we know, the story of Oni Judd is very much tried to make sure we are in our curriculum. Actually, one of our local librarians over at New Franklin, Tammy, has recently written a book about Ona Judd, which was really amazing. Yeah. So we're trying to make sure these, stories get told. Because I agree with you. Like I said, as someone newer who was not involved 10 years ago, there's so much benefit to learning placements, ceremonies, and making sure that we get this information out, especially as we look over to the repairs. So if there's no other questions for Kathleen as your presentation, we will move on, and thank you so much. And we would love to have you come back more actively within your time with this committee. So we are looking at the curation. There's been several conversations. I'll let Suzanne kind of take the lead.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, the UNH anthropology folks are concentrating on other challenges that they have right now. And Kathleen and the assistant mayor and I have had a conversation about maybe what makes the most sense is continuing to take Kathy's offer to continue to maintain the remains for a period of time. We could get that probably better documented than we have done, but at least get that more formally
Put into a
described.
memorandum.
Yeah.
And
And talk about, we could add in, any kind of language that we're looking for in terms of communication, cooperation, backups, that kind of thing. As we wait to see whether we want to find another venue. So I think it was really lovely for the offer to continue to maintain the remains in kind of the sacred space that she has been holding them in. And really, that's the kind of conversation to have here. I could draft up something similar to what, skinny down, obviously, to what I drafted for, potentially UNH, but we could just make it a simpler agreement. And really, it's just about backup and options and, if something happens to Kathleen, how do we have access? So I already informally know how to have access, but we could get it better documented as a way to kind of preserve the status quo in a way that hopefully works for the committee until we find an option that works and while the offer
or
is still
another
here.
options needed, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
The word curation is sometimes troubling because it often means it goes off into cold storage and disappears among thousands or millions of other boxes. I like to think of it as kind of a holding that was engendered to me by the committee, the descendant community at the time. After a great deal of discussion, and there was, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for any of those members to decide to leave portions of their ancestors behind. But they also felt like the ancestors would be amenable to the idea that perhaps science could tell them more about who they were and where they came from. And that was really important to the committee members at that time. I have been involved with other projects around the world. Oddly, I have encountered the skeletal remains of blacks in Romania and Albania, and possibly at a Revolutionary War site in Red Bank, New Jersey. And I work with a forensic anthropologist who's always looking for the best place to have historic samples examined and analyzed. A lot of the forensic places are set up for criminal investigation, and so they deal with modern samples all the time. But we're working with facilities in Europe who, by their own time depth, they just have more opportunity to look at older samples. So I've been keeping my eyes and ears open for any opportunity. And as soon as I am convinced that the technology has advanced to the degree that we could successfully extract DNA from these samples, I will bring that forward to the committee.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is the Dinah Chase Whipple Monument installation. That is scheduled for June 13th, 2025 at 1 p.m. At North Cemetery. Do we want to?
Sure.
You have the email, so it's easier.
So, yes, as the assistant mayor mentioned, it's June 13th, 1 o'clock at North Cemetery. We are working on a list of speakers for that event. Right now, confirmed, we have Pastor Jen from the North Church, who's offered to be part of our practice. You met her at the last internment that we did. Sam Tombarelli from Portsmouth High School. Mrs. Edwards. Roylene? Roylene?
Yes.
Is that- who I think Valerie put us in touch
Yes.
with, Valerie Cunningham. We're working with the family to see who from the family wants to speak, whether that's Laurel Yancey or one of the other family members. And then we're also waiting to hear back from Black Heritage Trail in terms of any speaker that the trail might want. And Colonial Dames, we're waiting to hear from them. As you know, they've been very supportive in helping to financially cover the monument. Yeah, and then we're trying to figure out who's the representative from the city, and so it's coming together. I think hopefully in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so, we'll have the final lineup of speakers, and open to other suggestions. And the city council tonight will have the opportunity to formally authorize the city manager to help make this event happen. And, if we need any kind of special assistance from Public Works and all those other pieces that tends to be needed. Sue Sterry has offered to help, print a little program once we have the final name of speakers. Invitations have gone out, which is what you received, because we've let STEAM Academy at UNH know the date. So that's good that they've been reaching out. So that's awesome. Yes. We've also let Appledore Marine Engineering, who made a contribution for this purpose, to let them know the date. and time, and going to reach out to other donors. So that's kind of the summary. Once we have the final speaker lineup, we'll probably push out on social media through the city's channels, and maybe whatever we mock up for that social media, maybe what we can do is make sure the Black Heritage Trail, SAC, other organizations have that ability to kind of link, share all of those magic things that happen on social media. And also get it out in our city newsletter. If anyone has any other suggestions about how to make sure that people are aware of this event, feel free to let me know, and we can kind of push out communications.
And hopefully the individual organizations can also push potentially this out in their newsletter. And we will, like I said, like Suzanne said, we'll be talking about it tonight at City Council, and I will make sure to also have it noted on our first meeting in June, which will be right before this. I'm just confirming that. Will be that Monday. I'll make sure it's on the agenda. Unfortunately, I am out of town that weekend for a family event that I am not able to attend. But we will make sure representatives from city government are there in reading a message on my behalf for this event. Okay. And next we have other scheduled events. So we want to give a floor a little to the other committee members that are part of other organizations as you are wrapping up your Juneteenth or other burial ground events. If you'd like to share that with the committee, feel free. Yes, just start.
Black Heritage Trail has a lot for Juneteenth, starting the 8th. Movie discussion at Temporal Israel. We're doing Own a Judge school tours. A lot of schools are kind of scared to sign up for them. So any way you can promote that would be very helpful. We've got a author discussion with Erica Armstrong Dunbar, who wrote Never Caught, in Manchester, and that is on the 12th. Sorry, it's like a long 2 weeks. It's all gonna mush together for me. We are unveiling a special project, our AR project, and we're working with Mount Vernon. So we'll have a panel with the creators of our project and theirs on the 14th at the public library. That night we have a freedom dinner partnering with BLM. And then there's the Howard Gospel Choir on the 15th at the Music Hall. And then the 19th is the usual drumming at the burying ground. And then we're hoping to do something to honor the 10th anniversary. And I think that's it. There's probably something I'm forgetting. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy few weeks, and I hope you all are able to join us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of SAC, unfortunately, Jill can't come here to give you the list, but I know that one of the main events they have is the March Across the Bridge. That will go to the burial ground.
Yes.
And then Sandy Clark has other events planned
Yes.
as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the memory to recite it.
Oh yeah, the author event. She's doing a dramatic reading.
Yes.
Yes,
About that.
Sandy
Yeah.
is, yes.
I'm like, there's a lot
Yes.
more that I'm
Yes.
forgetting.
And the SAC celebrates its 25th anniversary.
SAC celebrates its 25th anniversary, so we're still planning different events, and then the exhibition, one of the main one will be about the history of hair.
Exciting. Okay. I would look for any other business from anyone.
Just a couple quick updates.
Thank you.
I have the tiles. Jerome has the boxes in my office. It's all laid out. It's ready to be for install, which feels amazing. He and I are both extremely relieved that we're at this phase. Our tile person is scheduled for May 12th to do the install. So you'll see a tent go up that day. That'll take about 3 days to install and cure that. So we'll have heating pads down there overnight for a few nights, And so that's all scheduled, so that, the Sankofa should be completed by the latest, the 15th. Obviously, weather could have some slight effect, but everything is scheduled. We have the tile in our possession, the laid out pieces that Jerome's mapped out. I have not taken it out of the box. We're not touching that until Johnny, the tile person, takes it out himself. But it's all mapped out. And then the week of May 26th, Daedalus Conservation is coming in. Again, weather dependent, but he's got multiple days there as a buffer to do, to re-wax the bronze sculptures, to refinish the metal sculptures, to recoat the pedestal, and to paint all of the letters and the ribbon, and also repaint all the letters on the Court Street side on the granite. So that'll probably take all week, I would imagine. The letters are going to have to be done by hand. So everything's looking good. We're lined up. Let's just hope that weather cooperates for Daedalus, because the tile is a little bit more easy to control. So as far as the chip seal, I'm not sure. I'm waiting to hear back from staff at DPW about that being scheduled. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to be done for Juneteenth, but everything else will be looking good. And then I believe the water line project should be wrapped up in the next few weeks, from my understanding. So we're looking really good. So excited to be getting all of this done.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll open up the floor to public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to speak, or anyone on Zoom, please raise your hand.
Let me just ask Corin about
Oh, do you want to
Oh,
come up
do
and
you
use a
want-
mic before we
the,
get in trouble again?
the tiles in the fence, because we do have the patterns for those, and those
Okay.
can be replaced.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, we were
Anna
talking
has
about
all
that with
those.
Daedalus, so
Yeah.
we should probably look at doing that.
Yeah,
They're faded,
they're faded, and some of them are cracked.
yes. So you have replicas? or
Anna
you
has
have-
all the patterns. Anna Nuttall has all, because the middle school did those
They painted that.
originally.
Okay.
And so she has all the patterns, and she believes that, that they weren't, that the ceramic wasn't the best quality, and that if it was put on a different quality tile, it would be not only more vibrant, but would last longer.
So that's maybe something we should talk to Josh about, a Daedalus. That's something they could probably do.
Yeah.
So when he comes, we should
Get-
have
get
that
together with
conversation.
it.
That's
Okay,
great.
good.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Okay, and with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much for your